So now that we know how to use Z-spheres, let's talk about how to control these curves. So let's go into our brush palette here. Let's grab a cube 3D, drag it on our canvas, go into edit mode, make Polymesh 3D, turn on Polyframe, and let's go to Brush, BI, IMM Army Curve, hit the M key, and go ahead and grab that tank tread. Now, sometimes when you have an IMM brush selected and you just drag off a mesh and you hold down Shift, it'll wrap around the object like this. So you can make your brush size bigger, and then you can hold down Shift, it'll wrap around, and it's good to go. Now this can, I've gotten this to break enough times to where what I prefer to use, for example, if I undo those, I go into, move this thing, and then I hold down Control Shift, and let's do a clip curve. So you hold down Control Shift, and we haven't talked about clip curve yet, but it's pretty self-explanatory. You drag this out, just like any other modifier brush, and then any point past that gradient is going to snap to the line. So we're basically just going to change the shape of this thing. So if I go back into my brush here and then I drag out and hold down Shift, it'll snap to this shape. If for whatever reason this doesn't work or it breaks, another alternative is to hold down Control Shift. And here's another brush we haven't talked about yet. You can use a slice curve here. And then if you hold down Control Shift and you drag this out, it's just going to slice right through our geometry and make a new polygroup. Now, just to explain this, if I go down here to initialize, and let's say we make a Q cube, and let's go ahead and scale this up. And you know what? Let's make a Q cube with a resolution of like 6, and then tab, and then 6, tab, 6. Hit enter, and then hit Q cube. If you do have edge loops that support this, you can just, we'll hit Control W, make it all in polygroup. Hold down Control Shift, go into visibility, and you can just isolate this and then hit Control W to make a polygroup. If you have weird geometry or you just don't feel like it, go in here, hold down Control Shift, go to slice, and now you can just slice through this object like so, and that'll give you a new polygroup. Now the reason I'm doing this is, if you hit hit Q, go to BI, Brush Insert Army Curve, hit M, grab those tank treads again. Now as you go across a polygroup here and hold down Shift, it'll want to automatically snap around that polygroup here. If you go through this side, it'll do that as well. And to make this a little bit more obvious, let's go ahead and hit Switch, hit Control N, and then we'll go in here and we'll grab a Sphere 3D, drag it on our canvas, go into Edit Mode, make Polymesh 3D, hold down Control Shift, we'll just slice right across this thing. And then again with that tank tread selected, just get the curve anywhere near it and hold down Shift, then it'll snap right around that polygroup line. An alternative to that is you can hold down Control Shift and you can isolate just by tapping one of those polygroups. And then under the stroke menu here, we'll go ahead and dock it on the left here. If you go into curve functions, you can frame polygroups. So if you have both of these showing, you can turn all these off and just frame the polygroup if you want to. You can also, if you have just one showing, you can frame the border. So either way is fine, and then since you have a curve there, all you have to do is just tap that curve and it'll update with your brush. So if you undo that and choose the bullets, it'll update with bullets. You can do the bike chain, and it'll just update with that curve around there. So we're going to use this in conjunction with Z-spheres to control these curves as well. So for example, let's undo out of there, and we're going to go ahead and go to Subtool, Append a Z-sphere. So we've got a Z-sphere selected. We're going to turn on transparency mode. We're going to hit E. I'm just going to shrink this down a little bit, hit W so we can move it. And if you haven't watched the videos on Z-spheres yet, I would suggest doing that. In fact, you know what we can do? We can leave it in there, turn off transparency, and then when I drag on the surface of this object with draw, it's going to find the surface of my object. So say I wanted to draw something around here, what we can do is we can just hold down Shift, and it'll snap directly to that surface. Then hold down Shift and snap, and then we just go right around this object right here. And if we don't want to make this a little bit more high fidelity, we can hit Q, drag this out there, and then we can hit W, and we can move these out. Although obviously it's a little bit easier to just go ahead and draw. So Q, Control tap this to activate it. And once we get into Z-sphere topology, that'll make more sense. But you can just go through here and you can use this chain to kind of wrap around this object. Now you don't have to stick to this object if you don't want to. You can hold down, and I'm only holding down Shift so I can make it consistent. But you can go off the object as well, and you can move this out, and then we can go ahead and just move these things around and rotate them around however you'd like. So essentially we're just making a nice controlled object that we can use to guide our curve. So I'm going to go into solo mode here. And again, if we want to round these out, we can just tap Q and then go through here and just use the move brush to kind of move this around. And we turn on transparency. I am going to just move this last one out here. So we're going to have like a snake coiling around this ball or something like that. And just a couple more here. There we go. So if I go into solo mode here and I hit A, this is the default behavior for adaptive skin. So if we go down here to the adaptive skin menu with the Z-Sphere selected, you're going to see it's going to turn it into a Dynamesh by default. I'm going to go ahead and turn that down to 0. My density I'm going to turn down to 1. So then if I hit A again, it'll preview, and now I've got a nice non-dense object here. So I'm going to go ahead and say make adaptive skin. Now that's going to just put a tool floating in the tool palette here. So if I want to, so I have my original sphere, I have my Z-sphere, and then my skin Z-sphere, my adaptive skin that I made, I need to go ahead and do an append, and then just append that skin Z-sphere right here. We can go ahead and turn the Z-sphere off. We can keep it around in case we need it again, but I'm just going to turn it off so I don't get confused. And now I can use this to guide my curve. So I'm going to hold down Control-Shift, and we're going to grab Select Lasso. I'm going to just clip these ends off here, like so. And then Geometry Modify Topology Delete Hidden. Hit Control-W, make it all one polygroup. And now, if you remember, you can use in ZModeler, you can grab your ZModeler brush, BZM, hover over an edge. We're going to polygroup this poly loop, and then we're going to tap this one and tap Alt, so we get 2 separate polygroups here. And I mean, I guess if you want, well, let's make 2 separate polygroups, it'll be a little bit easier. Hold down Control-Shift and click the vertice right between them, so you get both of them. Go ahead and do a Geometry Modify Topology Delete Hidden. And now, if you remember, under Stroke, there is a frame polygroups now. So you can do frame mesh, and it'll go right down the middle of these. So then you can go back into BI Brush Insert Curve. We'll go ahead and grab the scales, and we'll just tap this, and it'll update with scales right down that curve. If we don't want that curve anymore, remember, you can just tap away from your object. If you can't do that, just go over here under your curve functions and hit Delete. And then you can also do like a split hidden, or a split unmasked points. And now you've got your original control strip, and then you've got your scales going exactly where you need to. Now, on your original control strip, if you didn't like how angular this was, we can go through here and underneath deformation, try it. We haven't talked about these yet, but try doing a polish by features, just kind of dragging that over. And what might even be better is make this open circle and then just tap it, and that'll just really smooth out those lines here. We'll get into polish by features and stuff later, but now you'll get a much smoother curve through those polygroups. So that way you won't have to go through here and like use your move brush as much to kind of curve these things back out. Or you could have, when you had your curve on there, you can use your curve brush to move that stuff around, or you can hit 6 to smooth, or with the new curve functionality, you can hold down Shift and smooth it out. This is all in the curve functionality video. Now, hopefully that didn't seem like too much work, but there is actually an easier way to do all that. So let's go ahead and go into our Z plugin menu. And you're going to see in here I have a Curves Helper script right here, and I'm going to show you where that is in just a second, but I'm going to go ahead and show you the functionality of this first. So we have our original sphere. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all this other stuff. So delete, delete, delete. I'm going to go ahead and append a Z-sphere. And I'm assuming that you would have like a scene where you would want the Z-sphere chain to like follow something. That's the only reason I'm appending a Z-sphere. You can just have a Z-sphere as its own tool if you want to. But you know, if you needed it to follow something specific, you can just use the rest of your scene to kind of dictate that. But we're going to start here, and one caveat to using this is your Z-sphere chain has to only go in one direction. So for example, if I hit Q and I draw on this, and then I use move to pull this out, I can't go back here and add another Z-sphere chain. I have to continue to go here, and then continue to go here, but I can't go back. I have to have a start chain and an end chain. Now between these, of course, I can make as many as I want, and I can do whatever I'd like to with them. And again, you can move, you can rotate, you can use the bone positions in between to kind of go down the parent hierarchy chain. But you have to have a start and an end. So if you do have that, all you got to do is that you can say copy Z-sphere chain. It'll say Z-sphere chain copied. Now to create the curve, you can't have a Z-sphere selected. So you can either choose another object in your scene, or you can append a null object, like just a poly mesh, and then you can go create curve. That'll go ahead and create a curve where your Z-sphere chain was. So if we turn that off, we have a curve here. And like I said before, you can go in here to stroke. Let's go to brush, insert, IMM curve, grab hose 02. Go ahead and tap that. And it looks like this hose isn't welded, so you know what? We can fix that. Let's go into our brush menu here. Modifiers. Turn on weld points. Tap the curve to update it. And now the points are welded. So now you can hover over this curve, and then as you start manipulating it, you can hold down Shift if you need to smooth it. You can hover over it and then hold down Control if you want to twist along it. Or you can even update this. brush insert, army curve, hit M. Let's go back to the bike chain. We'll update it with the bike chain. We'll make it a little bit bigger. So again, you have all the same functionality, only you can use just a Z-sphere chain as opposed to converting it to a polymesh and doing the polygroup thing. You can use this script. So if you Google ZBrush Curves Helper, the first one, useful small scripts and macros with ZBrush 4R8, click on that. And then if you scroll down, you're going to see Marcus made this thread, and then there's a Curves Helper. Let's go ahead and click that. Scroll down, here's the curveshelper.zip. Here's the instructions on how to install it. It's pretty straightforward. It's basically like installing a plugin. And then once you restart ZBrush, over in your Z plugin menu, you'll have a Curves Helper, and you can just follow the instructions I've just given.